Hello and welcome to this short video about Jaguar XK8 high performance dipsticks. This is video 72 in my series of XK8 videos. In this video I'm going to show you all about checking the engine oil level, the change of oil capacities, a little bit about oil coolers and TSBs related to oil capacity and dipsticks, including the high performance dipstick. So I'm going to do this by going through 7 sections. First of all, show the location of the dipstick, how to check the oil level, the original TSB 100-17 for changing in capacities, the result in different lengths of dipstick, section 5 then the oil capacity changes, section 6 oil coolers, and section 7 then the final TSB 204-13, which was the high performance packed dipstick. What I'm not going to go through is the correct or the best oil for your Jaguar XK8. I've already done that in a previous video, EP38. If you're interested in Jaguar XK8s, might I suggest you subscribe to my channel by pressing the rectangular red subscribe button, clicking the bell to be reminded when videos are issued, click the thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't, and if you have any questions or comments, please ask them at the bottom of the video. So first of all, section 1, location. So the location of the dipstick is actually on the left hand side of the engine bay, and you can see the red handles sticking up there between the engine and the brake distribution. To actually take a reading from the dipstick, all you have to do is pull it up and read the oil level. There is a correct way to do this. So section 2 is how to check the oil level as per the Jaguar instructions. So in the manual it says it's preferred to check the oil level after the vehicle has been standing, that is, with the engine completely cold. If the engine has been started, do not check the oil level until the engine has reached normal operating temperature. Stop the engine and wait for a minimum of 2 minutes. This will allow the oil to drain back to the sump. This particular engine has got very good oil drainage, but you do have to be 100% sure. The difference between checking directly and waiting is approximately 1 litre, so there is a big margin of error, so it's worth waiting the 2 minutes. There are a couple of different designs of dipsticks. The earlier cars had a plain dipstick with 2 holes for max and min, and the later cars had a little bit more complicated dipstick with actually stamped minimum and maximum and a little hash section which I'll go into later. So early car dipstick markings, you basically read between the 2 dots. The higher dot obviously is maximum, the lower dot is minimum, and the difference between the dots is roughly 1 litre, so you can work out proportionally how much you need to add if you're between the 2 dots. What do the markings mean? Well, obviously on the later cars, the minimum is roughly 7.3 to 7.6 litres depending on the model. The maximum is plus 1 litre, and the top of the hatch section is plus 3/4 of a litre. The hatch section actually is there to improve the oil, well, it reduces surface tension of the oil and allows it to cling to the stick to make it easier to read. While we're on the dipstick, bit of a top tip. While you've got the dipstick out, check the O-ring, make sure it's still sealing. What you don't want to do is reduce the pressure in the crankcase. So check the O-ring condition. There is only one, make sure it's in good condition. The part number is C2A1417, but they're not available, unfortunately, so you've got to get your O-ring box out and pick one suitable. Section 3 then, TSB 100-17. This was the initial capacity increase. So back in November 1999, this technical service bulletin came out basically to increase the engine oil capacity. Doesn't really explain why, just says that they've increased the capacity by 1 litre. As a running change, it was introduced early in model year 2001, XK8 and XJ8 series vehicles. And they did this purely by installing a revised dipstick, part number XR8 2806. So, lowering the technical service button, it basically says the old part number, which is NME 1723NA, which apparently is supposed to be stamped to the top, or just underneath the top of the handle. On my dipstick, for example, a very early car had no markings whatsoever. So if you've got a dipstick with this part number or no markings at all, you've got the original dipstick, and it has a very low capacity for oil, or say 1 litre less capacity. The new dipstick is advising is the part number XR83-6752-AC, which is a little bit confusing because they've already mentioned 2 part numbers. So basically, in the end, the higher capacity dipstick can be either the XR83-6752-AC, which actually was installed in the production line, or the retrofitted XR8 2806, which was fitted sort of post-delivery. And then finally, the later cars had the same dipstick basically, but the part number is C2C22714. All those dipsticks are the higher capacity dipsticks. Back in 2000, if you were given the high capacity dipstick, you were also given the handbook supplement JGM 101618/001, and this basically gave you all the information and the about the new and the old dipstick and the capacity increase of 1 litre, 1.75 imperial pints, or 1.06 US quarts. So there you go. If you've got an old dipstick without any of those part numbers, you can actually add an extra litre without any problem. And that was the function of these higher performance dipsticks. The dipsticks were physically shorter than the original one. It is a little bit more complicated than that. So section 4, I'll look into the different, I'll explain the different dipstick lengths. So the original dipstick length, I measured my dipstick from the shoulder of the red handle to the first hole was 503 millimeters, second hole 515. It's about 12 millimeter difference, half an inch difference between the 2 holes, max and min. I actually measured the dipstick tube. This is actually significant because they changed the dipstick tubes on later cars. And then I compared my original 4 litre dipstick length with Gary VanRemortel's 4.2 litre dipstick measurements, and this was the comparison. And you can see the original 4 litre, the dipstick tubes are shorter. The 4.2 litre dipstick tubes are longer, so it's a slightly longer dipstick, albeit it's got a shorter measurement. All gets a bit complicated. But one thing that was significant was actually the distance between the 2 holes on the original dipsticks was only 12 millimeter, but on the later dipsticks it's actually 18. And this is probably due to the fact that the construction inside the sump has engine features or castings that actually displaces the oil higher up the oil level gets, which I'll show you in some sections later. So section 5 then, oil capacities and their changes. So in the beginning, model year 1997, AJ26 and then further AJ27, the engine oil capacity was 7.3 litres or 6.5 litres if you didn't have an oil cooler. Then model year 2000, together with those with that TSP, AJ26, AJ27 still, it was increased by 1 litre to 8.3 or 7.5 litres with no cooler. Then finally, model year 2003 cars, the AJ34, the 4.2 litre engine, the oil capacity was increased to a further 0.3 litre to 8.6. All those cars have oil coolers. So why was this overfilling possible? A couple of good reasons. There's quite a deep bed plate at the bottom of the engine, which means the sump is a long way away from the bottom of the crank, And also there's a windage tray, basically a baffle or a block that sits in between, or a plate, sorry, that sits in between the crank and the basically the oil reservoir underneath. So when I checked my sump, when I was doing the cam change tensioners and guides, I had the front cover off, and this is the picture of the bottom corner of that. And you can see, I actually took this picture to show the adding the adhesive, but you can see inside the crankcase or the sump there, you cannot see the oil level. The oil level is extremely low, so there's a big scope to increase the amount of oil in there. Section 6 then, a little bit about oil coolers. We've mentioned it previously about with the capacity. Just mention it. So if you want to identify if you've got an oil cooler or not, on the early cars, the oil cooler is mounted high up above the front radiator and air conditioning. It's actually a square-looking radiator, small square-looking radiator. It's just in front of the power steering cooler, which is sort of like a long porcupine-looking thing. That was on early cars, quite a protective location. On later cars, for some reason, Jaguar put the oil cooler lower down, probably to get better cooling, but unfortunately it's very much exposed. Plus the fact, in this lower position, it's difficult, if not impossible, to drain it because of it's being so low. In the higher position, it naturally drains. So when you are changing your oil in cars with the oil cooler lower, you're not changing all the oil. They also, of a note, the porcupine thing, the prickly thing, the power steering cooler had different positions. On the you can see on the one picture there, it's extremely exposed. And there's lots of things on the forums about people damaging these oil coolers, hitting curbs and stones and what have you. So the higher position is actually preferred, but probably not as efficient. It wasn't until the model year 2005, with the deeper, lower front bumper, it got some real protection. So the final variant, which had the two mouths, the lower mouth actually was there to help protect and feed air into the oil cooler and power steering cooler. While we're on to oil cooler, one way to see if you've got one, actually, if you look at the bottom of your auxiliary belt, in between the two pulleys there, the two pipes coming out of the sump, behind that is actually the oil pump, and those are the oil cooler pipes. So if you've got two of them, you've got an oil cooler. But also the top tip then is to check the condition of those pipes around the swages, because that's where they tend to fail. These are some pictures one of the guys of the Jaguar Forums has shared with the forum, where the actual pipes have split. It's actually ruptured and oil's ended up everywhere. You can imagine if you lose all your engine oil, it's probably not very good for your engine. So please check those oil cooler pipes. It's very easy to do. You can see them at the bottom of the auxiliary belt as per the previous picture. So finally, section 7, TSB 204-13, R performance dipsticks. And this basically is with the introduction of R performance. I've done a video of R performance, the actual full kit. That's video 26. I'm not going to go into all the details of that in this video. If you want to see it, have a look at that one. But there was a TSB directly after the introduction of those performance kits to actually add the oil dipsticks. Bear in mind that a year previous, the previous TSB had already been issued on standard cars. Now with the introduction of the high performance kit, it became more apparent that you needed these dipsticks. You needed more oil capacity. And they actually say in the, it's quite funny to be honest, in the TSB, once the large R performance wheel kits have been installed, some customers may drive their cars in a manner that may result in heavy cornering. Oh dear. This could cause oil to surge around the engine and result in reduced lubrication. Therefore, as a precautionary measure, an extra litre of oil must be added to the vehicle to ensure optimum performance. Well, this is quite rich because they've already said previously on standard cars to do it. Now they've made you able to go around corners even faster with bigger fat wheels, 20-inch alloy wheels, etc. It makes it more apparent you need this. One thing of note, in the bottom of the sump there aren't any baffles, so the oil just swishes around wherever it wants. So basically, you needed, if you had Arm Performance kits added, you were issued with the correct dipstick, but the dipsticks weren't actually needed if vehicles were manufactured after the model year 2000 because they'd already been introduced to the production line. So there you go. 7 sections: location, how to check, TSP 100-17, different lengths, oil capacity, oil coolers, TSP 204-13. Everything you need to know about high performance dipsticks. Before I go, I'd like to thank Brian Robson and for mentioning his manual supplement which triggered the re-recording of this video. Thank you, Brian, for that. And also the guys at the Jaguar Forums, particularly Fla Steve Smoleroff for his oil rupturing pipes, and finally Gary VanRemortel for help and assistance in making the video. Thanks, Gary. Thank you very much for watching. Please, I thought you'd hopefully find that a bit entertaining. It's not particularly useful. Please like, comment, share and subscribe if you'd like to see more XK videos.